Welcome back, everyone. You're tuning in to another episode of Talk English Podcast. I'm John, here to bring you tips and fun conversations to help you improve your English.
And I'm Sarah, ready to give you the best advice to help you get more comfortable speaking English. Today's episode is all about something a lot of English learners struggle with. We're going to talk about that classic dilemma. I can understand English, but I can't speak it well.
It's a tough one, Sarah. Many of our listeners have reached out saying they can understand English in movies or when they read, but when it comes time to speak, they freeze up.
Absolutely, but don't worry, John. We've got a lot of tips today to help our listeners break through that barrier. Speaking English fluently is a skill, just like learning to play an instrument or a sport. It takes practice, but the right approach makes a huge difference.
Exactly. So let's dive in. First, let's talk about why this listening-speaking gap even exists. Sarah, why do you think so many learners have trouble speaking, even when they understand English?
Great question, John. One of the main reasons is lack of practice. A lot of learners spend hours listening to English, watching movies, listening to podcasts, reading books, but they don't get enough speaking practice. Listening is a passive activity, while speaking is active. You have to actually use the language to improve.
That makes sense. So it's kind of like watching someone play a sport versus actually playing the game yourself.
Exactly. Another big issue is the fear of making mistakes. A lot of people are afraid to speak because they're worried about saying something wrong, even if they understand everything perfectly.
So it's like being scared to jump into the pool because the water looks cold, right? But once you get in, it's not so bad.
Exactly. And there's also the issue of mental translation. A lot of learners translate everything in their head from their native language to English before speaking. This slows them down and prevents spontaneous conversation.
That sounds exhausting, having to translate every word before you speak it.
It really is, John, and that's why it's so important to get your brain used to thinking in English without translating.
And that brings us to thinking speed. I've heard that's a big challenge too, right?
Yes. If your brain isn't trained to think quickly in English, it's hard to keep up in a conversation. But the good news is, with practice, your brain can get better at switching between languages faster.
So the more you speak, the quicker your brain adapts. It's like working out your muscles, but for your brain.
Exactly, John. And just like muscles, your brain needs regular practice to stay in shape.
All right, Sarah. Now let's talk about how we can break the silence and start speaking without fear. What's the first step to overcoming that fear?
Well, John, the first thing is accepting that fear. It's okay to be scared, but don't let that fear stop you. Remember, speaking English is a skill that gets better with practice.
So, like diving into a cold pool. You might shiver a bit at first, but you'll get used to it.
Exactly. And here's a simple tip. Start with small steps. Try speaking English with friends or even practice in front of a mirror.
Wait, mirror practice? That sounds a little funny, but I guess I see the point. You get to see your own expressions and build confidence that way.
Exactly. And don't forget to record yourself. It's a great way to listen to your progress and notice areas where you can improve.
So we're setting small, achievable goals, like learning 5 new words a day or trying to start a conversation at the store?
Yes. Breaking it down into smaller tasks makes it less overwhelming, and each small victory will give you more confidence to keep going.
And embracing mistakes is part of the process, right?
Absolutely. Mistakes are a natural part of learning. Every time you speak, even if it's a bit messy, you're making progress. Think of mistakes as stepping stones, not stumbling blocks.
I love that mindset. It turns the whole process into something exciting rather than stressful.
Exactly, John. And remember, every time you speak, you're not just improving your English skills, you're also boosting your self-esteem.
Now, Sarah, let's talk about how our listeners can practice speaking English every day, even when they're alone. What are some good ways to make it a regular habit?
Well, John, one fun way to start is by narrating your daily activities. You can describe what you're doing as if you're in a documentary.
I love that idea. For example, I could say, "Here we see John preparing his morning coffee, a crucial ritual for his productivity."
Exactly. It makes speaking English fun, and you're practicing in a low-pressure way. Another method is using apps that allow you to practice speaking and get feedback.
Apps? Can they really help with speaking?
They can't replace real conversations, but they're a great supplement, especially for practicing pronunciation and receiving instant feedback.
Okay, so apps are helpful but shouldn't be the only tool. What else can people do?
Reading aloud is another great practice. It helps with both pronunciation and fluency. Pick a book or article and read it out loud.
Does it matter what kind of book?
It's best to choose something at your level, but also pick something interesting so it doesn't feel like a chore.
And speaking to pets, right? They're great listeners.
Absolutely. Pets, plants, or even inanimate objects can make great conversation partners if it helps you practice without feeling self-conscious.
And don't forget the mirror again. Talking to yourself can help build confidence. Sarah, what about learning from the best? I've heard mimicking native speakers is a great technique.
That's right, John. Listen to native speakers, whether it's a news anchor, actor, or anyone you admire, and try to imitate their pronunciation, tone, and rhythm.
So like trying to talk like I'm presenting the evening news?
Exactly. It's not just about mimicking for fun. It's about learning the rhythm of the language and improving your pronunciation.
Could this also help with learning slang and idioms?
Yes, definitely. When you mimic native speakers, you pick up on casual expressions and cultural nuances that you won't find in textbooks.
One more thing. Let's talk about going from passive to active learning. Sarah, what's that all about?
Passive learning is when you listen to music, watch TV, or read books without engaging actively with the language. Active learning means using the language actively, speaking, writing, or interacting.
So instead of just listening to a podcast, I should reflect on what I heard and try to summarize it in English?
Exactly. You can also practice shadowing speakers. Repeat what they say, try to match their tone, and focus on the details of how they speak.
And using subtitles while watching shows can also help connect spoken and written English, right?
Definitely. And try writing a summary of what you read or heard. It's a great way to reinforce what you've learned.
This has been such a helpful discussion, Sarah. I'm sure our listeners are feeling more confident about speaking English now.
I hope so. Remember, folks, it's all about taking those small steps, practicing every day, and embracing the learning process.
And don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we grow.
Exactly, John. So keep practicing, keep improving, and we'll be here next week with more tips. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to Talk English Podcast for more fun and helpful tips. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out to us. See you next time.
Stay confident and keep practicing. Bye for now.